Welcome to Behind the Bass. I'm Samboat, and this week we'll be looking at the bass part of American Girl by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This one was a patron request. It'll be the 6th Tom Petty song that I've done. The reason I haven't done more Tom Petty is because I haven't been getting any requests for them. I've got so many requests from you all that I need to get to instead. So I was real glad that one of my longtime patrons requested this because it was a lot of fun to learn and play. Ron Blair was the bassist for this song and was Tom Petty's bassist until 1982 when Howie Epstein came in. Howie Epstein was the longtime bassist until his death in 2001, where Ron rejoined until Tom Petty's death in 2017. Ron tended to use a jazz bass with a pick, and so that's what I used for my cover of American Girl. You can see in all the live videos that Ron uses a jazz bass with a pick. Ron only plays on the D string for the opening riff. The riff plays once, and then it plays a second time. During that second time, you can actually hear two different bass parts. In the beginning, it's the same, and then that higher pitch part tends to fade out, and the lower part comes in, where right at the verse, the low part is fully in. In the live videos, Ron plays that higher octave part twice all the way through, and then shifts back down at the verse. That's not the only part of the song that has two bass parts. There's also the bridge and the outro. Once you hit that power chord in the bridge after the groovy riff, the high part tends to fade out while that low part comes back in. It's about 2 measures in that it does this, and in the live performances, Ron ends up doing just that, where he switches from that high part to the low one 2 bars in. And then the producers wanted him to go back and forth on some harmonics.
So that's on the record all through the end.
In the interview, Ron talks about doing the harmonics of the D and the G up at the 12th fret. If you're playing the riff, you can also use your pinky at the 7th fret in that rest to try to emulate that octave that is there. You can play around with those harmonics to figure out what you like and what you might want to try to fit in as you're playing the riff. I could have tried this out a couple different ways. There's the dot regular pattern, like the dotted quarter note. That is real common in a lot of songs. This one, it has the dotted eighth, regular eighth. And so while it may not technically be the proper way to notate it, it's very clean. If you notate it as dotted, tied, and then regular, you're notating those first 2 notes that are the same length as different things, which can be confusing. Even though it's the proper way to notate it, I find that's confusing and kind of messy or cluttered to try to read. That's why I use the dotted 8th note pattern. So I like to think of the main riff as being either simple or fancy. There are a lot of different bass parts in many songs where they'll start out very simple and get more complex as it goes on. A great example of that is Sunny by Boney M. In this song, however, it starts out simple, and then instead of gradually getting more complex, at the end, it's a lot more complex. So for this beginning, simpler riff, there's not a lot of rhythmic variation in it like there is at the end with the fancier version. You can hear this very clearly in the live videos of Ron playing. The second half of the song, with that fancier riff, there's a lot of rhythmic variation and locking in with those extra notes that the kick drum plays because it just fits so well. Having that variation from the beginning to the end of the song helps add a progression that lets you know the song is nearing its end or its climax. One of the things that Ron Blair does live is he'll play the part differently each time he plays it. Bill Wyman of the Rolling Stones did this, but he did that in the studio recording as well. Thankfully, Ron pretty much did the same riff in the studio version each time he played it. One analogy I like to use for this is having a road map and stopping along the way to see the sights to the final destination. One notable difference that Ron tends to do in the live versions is he has a lot more slides going up and down the neck to play a different fill or a little different lick than in the studio version. Oftentimes, whenever he goes to the note G, such as in bar 19, instead of being high on the D string, he'll be down an octave lower on the E string playing the riff. And similarly, whenever he, in the studio version, is on the low G, he'll be an octave higher at the G on the D instead. One more thing I wanted to mention, that here in the bridge, where it goes, in bar 71, there are no 16th notes like there are in bar 69 and the rest of this part. If you listen closely, you'll hear that the guitars play those 16th notes where the bass does not. Remember to support the channel by ordering Samboat merch and signing up for Patreon. Rock on, and I'll see you next time.